Oh god, I can already see the dislikes come in. It's a bit of a different video today. Today we're going to talk about the Nfs community because I feel like, especially recently with the, recent announcement of Need for Speed Payback, the community has just become a lot more toxic than I remember it being. Now CJ, he also made a video on this a few days ago. I've had this video in the pipeline for a while now, but if you do want to go ahead and watch his as well, I'll link him down in the description. But I've got a few things to say, and it's not just specifically the Reddit, which don't worry, we'll talk about later. Now there's a lot of things not necessarily wrong with the community, just extremely toxic, which I'm going to discuss in this video. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get straight into this big pile of mess. So, for a lack of a better term, I'm going to call these first group of people the Nostalgia Boys. These are the types of people that go on every Need for Speed video ever made demanding a Most Wanted remaster. The types of people who thought the Underground 1 car list was better than the one in Need for Speed 2015, and don't worry, we're going to talk about that in a minute. Now first off, I would like to say Underground 2 is one of my favourite racing games of all time, but I don't think I'm blinded not by nostalgia like a lot of these people are. The one consistent theme I see among all of these people is they argue that the older Undergrounds had a greater car list and greater customization. Now I would like to note that Underground 1 only had 20 cars. And fair enough, each car had a pretty good amount of customization, but you've got to keep in mind every single body part was the same. Back then you didn't get Rocket Winnie kits and Liberty Walk kits. They weren't authentic, they were made by Black Box and they were the same among every single car. Now, do I think Need for Speed 2015's customization was perfect? No, not by any stretch of the imagination. A lot of cars were lacking body parts, but to constantly moan and act like Ghost aren't working on that, it's a bit of a joke to me. Considering they added more body parts in customization updates, it's a bit hard to see where you're coming from. Underground 1 and Underground 2 Most Wanted were great games in their own regard, and in my opinion, some of the best racing games ever made. But we've moved on from those times. Simply making a Most Wanted remaster will not progress the Need for Speed series. If anything, all it's going to do is step the series back. People forget that Most Wanted had a lot of flaws as well. The cops, especially in lower levels, were very close to being Need for Speed 2015 dead. Some of the rubber banding in higher blacklist events was extremely bad, a lot worse than component parts, and even then people still moaned about that. And if you played Underground 1, you will know especially some of the later levels was extremely worse. I personally didn't have a problem with the rubber banding, but considering this is a point that the same people moan about, it doesn't really make a lot of sense really. From my point of view, it's really frustrating to see people like this blinded by nostalgia and by their childhood. If you think about it from a structural standpoint, really doesn't make a lot of sense the points they argue about. But sadly, these people will still moan long after this video has gone out. That isn't probably going to change. And something else which probably isn't going to change is Underground 3. Daddy, why? Underground 3. Why don't people understand that Underground 3 is just a name? If you are expecting a game with only tuners, no cops, and a car list of around like 30 cars, you're probably not going to get that in the modern day era. And then if you're asking for a game that takes its extreme influences from Underground, you literally got that last year. Need for Speed 2015 was all at night. Underground 1 and 2 were always at night. Underground 1 and 2 focused on urban car culture. Need for Speed 2015 focuses on urban car culture. Yet people moaned that in Need for Speed 2015 there was no daytime. There was no daytime in other Underground games. A perfect example of this is Most Wanted 2012. Just because that was given the Most Wanted name didn't mean it was Most Wanted. Before people were demanding Underground 3, believe it or not, they were demanding Most Wanted, and guess what? They got given that. They got given that in a Burnout Paradise 2 format, basically, and it's synonymously agreed among the community that that's not really a Need for Speed game. If you were expecting a Most Wanted similar to what Black Box had made, similar with the Blacklist, that is not the game for you. And again, it proves my point that Underground 3 is just a name. If you are expecting Black Box, who are the guys who made the original Underground games, to come back from the dead and create Underground 3, it's not happening. Black box devs are scattered across all types of mediums. Some of them are working on Forza, some of them are working on Project Cars, some of them are working on Gran Turismo, some of them don't even work anymore. And believe it or not, the ones left over are still working at Need for Speed on the current title. So to conclude this section, Underground 3 is just a name. Don't live in 2004, it's bad for your health. So the simulation people, they're pretty straightforward. They kind of just struggle to realise that Need for Speed is an arcade game and it's supposed to be unrealistic. Need for Speed isn't Forza, and this is something which I see a lot. You know, it's just not Forza. Now, in some regards with the physics, they are correct. The physics in Need for Speed 2015, they weren't the greatest. But I personally believe, honestly, if you learn the physics, it's not that bad. Now, obviously, it shouldn't be the case where you need to learn them and you need to tune your cars and you are forced to do this. It should work straight out of the box. And honestly, I completely get that. I agree with you in 100%. I think the physics out of the box with the master slider should work. The cars shouldn't understeer if you're gripping. I completely get that. But it goes a bit deeper than that, because the amount of ridiculous complaints I saw about 2015's handling model, it hurts my head. The fact a 1,000 horsepower car doesn't wheel spin in Need for Speed. Like, come on, fail race, like, seriously? I think people forget that the game before Need for Speed 2015 was Rivals, and Rivals didn't include any of this either. Need for Speed Rivals didn't have a manual transmission. You know, the physics were arguably worse, albeit they were a bit more predictable, but Need for Speed 2015's physics were nowhere near as self-guided as Rivals were. And again, the funny thing is, Ghost listened anyway. They added a manual transmission in. They added, you know, certain modes, like drag races where you were forced to use manual transmission. Albeit, yeah, it wasn't the greatest, but that was because they were free updates. They weren't getting paid to do what they were doing. That doesn't happen in Forza. That doesn't really happen in Assetto Corsa. That doesn't happen in any other game besides Need for Speed. In terms of racing games, I know it happens in GTA, but even then, that game has microtransactions. You know, Ghost did what they did for free. Now, I personally believe in the next Need for Speed there should be some type of paid DLC so the game can be supported for longer. Maybe, you know, do car DLC and then give other stuff away for free, something across those lines. I think that type of method would work really well, but that's a conversation for a different day. And then to see that people are blaming the physics already for Need for Speed Payback, and we are currently in June, that makes no sense to me, especially considering Ghost have listened to almost every single request you've had so far. You wanted a grittier story mode? You've got a grittier story mode. You wanted a 350Z? You got a 350Z. You wanted more customization? They're giving you more customization. And do you really think with 2 years of development time they wouldn't have solved the physics? You've just got to use your head in this type of situation. It's really just common sense. And having heard from actual YouTubers who have gone to play the game at E3 who have said it is fixed, what's the problem? If you're expecting black box physics, like I said, you're not gonna get it. Black box are dead. They've been dead for a very long time now. Ghost is a completely new studio made up with developers not just from Criterion. They've got developers who made the Dirt games. I know Ben Warp previously worked for Codemasters. They've got, you know, developers from Black Box, a guy called William Ho who's been doing a lot of the interview stuff for Need for Speed Payback. He actually worked on Hot Pursuit 2 and Underground. He's working there. They're from everywhere. They're not just from Criterion, they're from every end of the spectrum. I'm honestly not sure if this group of people are just that fucking brain dead or if they actually believe this. I have been fortunate enough to go and play early builds of 2015 and stuff. I haven't gone out and played Payback. I haven't been invited to anything in Payback. But I'm pretty willing to say that Ghost haven't paid any of the YouTubers that have gone to say the things that they have said. If it was the same as it was when I went down, they essentially just pay for your accommodation, your flight, and that's it. This is something which Forza also do, but for some reason, there shouldn't even be a backlash from this. You're getting early gameplay. I don't really understand. It's better than, you know, other YouTubers who don't do racing game content going. Now, for whatever reason, the Forza community, it honestly, there's no one says anything bad about Forza. No one actually even gives constructive criticism about that game. You go onto the Reddit, they're talking about the times they posted in Horizon. They're not really talking about what should be improved in the game. But again, that's a story for a different video. But the point is, when Forza do this, there's nothing really said about it. They're just, it's okay, it's accepting. But when Need for Speed do this, and when they get YouTubers specifically to play the game early to recommend gameplay improvements, which you have said in the comments, I don't get it. It literally just makes no sense. Now, there's certainly an element of, yes, you've been invited out, and yes, they paid for your flights and stuff, but that is no reason for you not to give constructive criticism. Look at Theo, for example. Theo, before Need for Speed 2015, if you know Theo, he's shit on the Need for Speed series. All you've got to do is type in Need for Speed Rivals Black Panther, and a flurry of videos will come up of him hating on Need for Speed. At that point, honestly, it wasn't even constructive criticism, it was just straight up hate. But the point is, with him specifically at least, he's not scared of, explaining his opinions and letting people know what he thinks. Now, I can't necessarily say I know, LPN and Kazuki that well. I've only really met them a few times, but at least for Robin and for Theo, and Theo especially, me being quite a good friend of his, there's no bias there. I've had conversations with him, and he honestly tries to stay as neutral as possible. Now, obviously, we're all Need for Speed fans in the end of the day, so for me at least, there's definitely going to be some bias, because I like Need for Speed. I enjoy the series. I'm a big fan of the series. I want to see it prosper, just the same as it is for Forza. As much as I critique Forza, I want that series to do well, just for same as Gran Turismo, same as Dirt. It's all the same for me. And all you've got to do is look through the videos I've made to see that I am not scared of showing my opinion on the new Need for Speed and older Need for Speeds as well. And the whole idea of YouTubers being paid by Ghost to say nice things, in my opinion, it's just fucking stupid.
F is for friends who do stuff together.
Right, this is honestly the worst part of the whole video, to be honest. This is not constructive criticism. Now, I'm not sure why this is more prominent in the Need for Speed community than even like the COD community for some reason, but it seems like you know when you're being a bitch in the comments, you know when you've got a bit of a narky tone in what you're saying, you know when you're being a bit, you're trying to piss someone off, when you're being a bit of a smart ass. People, you know when you're doing that. And there's honestly, there's a fine line between constructive criticism and just straight up hate. In my opinion, positivity, especially with Need for Speed nowadays, I think they deserve it. I think, especially with the way the series gone from Rivals, taking the 2-year break, now the series isn't, on a yearly cycle anymore. I think positivity in the community is definitely a lot more needed. And I don't understand how in the community that we're in, that's just not really a thing anymore. If you go onto a Rainbow Six subreddit, if you go into any other forum, you're not really going to see the type of just absolute toxic content that is on, Need for Speed forums and places. For example, I'm not going to show any comments, but if you were to go onto the World War II, Call of Duty World War II, release trailer, there's hype behind that game because that's the first boots on the ground COD in a very long time. But if you go on to Need for Speed Payback, which is only adding to what you wanted in the original game, you just see comments about Underground 3, you just see comments, fix the fucking physics. That is not constructive criticism. That is just a retarded comment. Now, honestly, I am all aboard for constructive criticism. I literally have critiqued Need for Speed in this video. I've talked about the physics, I've talked about the customization, how things do need to improve, and I've made videos about what I want to see improve. But the way some of the idiots in this community go around it, it's just absolutely, honestly, it just hurts my head. It's mind-boggling. And then for people to say that Ghosts don't listen to the community is just even worse. I don't really get that either. The only thing they fell short of in the last game, which they promised, was neons, and I assume that was only down to time constraints and money constraints, because like I said, everything they did last time was free DLC, it wasn't paid. People like to overlook the positives, especially with Need for Speed. They forget that, although they didn't add neons, they added prestige mode, they added Eddie's challenge, they redid the rap editor and the livery editor and how that works. They added in more customization, they added in manual transmission, they added in 2 new cars, and they did all this for free as well. Like, this is free content for you. There's no reason for you to moan, because everything I just listed you got for £0, 0 pence. Now, as I've said before, Need for Speed 2015 specifically had issues. The netcode honestly was my biggest issue, the physics and the cops. Those are the 3 biggest things, and I've talked about this a million times on the channel, so I'm not going to go in depth about that. But there's a way of you, critiquing the game, and there's a way to do it, and the way that the majority of people do it in this community, honestly, it's just a bit rude. And I do think a lot of this comes down to people not really knowing what they want. Need for Speed has undergone a major identity crisis before Need for Speed 2015. So if you go from about like 2008-ish, you know, you had Undercover, then you had Shift, which tried to do simulation, you know, throughout that period we undergone many types of Need for Speed game, and I think it's got to the point where people just don't really know what they want. So honestly, if you're one of the people I've mentioned, don't take this to heart. If you dislike this video, all you're gonna do is pump me up in the search results, so you go ahead and leave a comment, because all you're doing is, you know, funding my growth. But on a serious note, I would ask you to like just reflect on the video, because I don't really want the community to be toxic like this. I like to think I am a racing game channel as a whole. I've got a soft spot for Need for Speed because I've seen it change over the years and I've followed its growth, similar with Midnight Club and Burnout back when they were a thing. But you know, I don't really want it to be as toxic as it is. I don't want to have to go into a Need for Speed comment section and be afraid to post something just because I'm being a bit positive and everyone else is not really liking the game. You know, just think about it really. I'm not expecting this video to shake the world, but it's just one of those things. I'm a bit sick of the community being so toxic and I don't really want this anymore. There's a way of going around, you know, what you want in the game, and you know, there's a certain way to approach certain situations, and honestly I feel like the way people are approaching certain things now is just a bit rude, a bit unneeded, and I just would like a bit of change. But anyway, that's pretty much my rant over. Do you agree with me? Are you one of those people that I listed? Do you disagree? I actually really want to hear your comments on this one, as I, you know, usually do. I always read through comments, so if you do have a say on the community and, you know, the way it's going, something you want to add to something maybe I missed, because I definitely did miss something in this video, leave it in the comments. I was going to wait till after E3 to do this, but, you know, I feel like this kind of just needs to be said, and now was the perfect time. I was in the perfect mood for it, so, I hope you guys, you know, I hope you guys agreed with what I said. If you did, hit the like and subscribe, I guess. And I will see you guys in the next one. You guys have been awesome. Stay safe and peace.